I let her steal my boat. Because I wanted her to. Yeah, sounds crazy when you say it out loud, but trust me, by the time she was stranded in the middle of the lake screaming for help, it all made perfect sense. See, I wasn't some revenge-hungry guy plotting payback. I'm Benjamin Reed, 49, retired military, living out what was supposed to be a quiet life by the water. My biggest concern used to be whether I had enough coffee beans for the weekend. Then she moved in, Skylar Campbell, the self-appointed queen of the HOA. The kind of person who believes community rules apply to private property if she says so. At first, I ignored her clipboard crusade, figured it was just suburban noise. But when she tried to take my boat, I realized something important. Some people only understand boundaries when they crash into them. So, I stopped fighting her. I let her think she'd won because what she didn't know was that every step of her little takeover had already been caught and set. But let me start at the beginning. Before we dive in, let me know where you're listening from today. If you've ever spent years surrounded by noise, sirens, shouting, and the hum of tension, you start craving silence like oxygen. That's what I wanted when I retired from the Army after 22 years. Not medals, not applause, just peace. So I bought a small house by Lake Fairview, a stretch of water so still in the mornings it looked like glass. My days were simple. Coffee before sunrise. A slow jog around the dock. The sound of loons calling across the water instead of barking orders or ringing phones. After 2 decades of constant movement, I finally learned how to sit still. I fixed up an old fishing boat, named her Liberty, and kept her tied neatly to my private dock. Most afternoons, I'd drift out just far enough to let the world disappear. Neighbors waved, ducks floated by. It was quiet, normal, the kind of ordinary that felt extraordinary after years of chaos. For 6 whole months, not a single problem. No drama, no noise, no one telling me what to do. Then she moved in. Her name was Skylar Campbell, and she arrived in a cloud of perfume, paperwork, and passive aggression. She called herself the acting chair of the Lakeside Homeowners Association. I didn't even know we had one. The first time I saw her, she was marching across my lawn holding a clipboard like it was a weapon. That was the moment I realized peace isn't something you find. It's something people like Skylar test, and believe me, she was about to test it in ways I couldn't have imagined. Skylar Campbell wasn't the kind of person you met. She was the kind who announced herself. The first morning after she moved in, I was out on my porch drinking coffee, watching fog roll off the lake. Peaceful. Then I heard the sharp click of heels on gravel. That sound doesn't belong near a lake. It was like a warning bell. Good morning, she chirped, already halfway onto my property. You must be Mr. Reed. She wore a pastel blazer, sunglasses big enough to block out shame, and carried a clipboard covered in color-coded tabs. I'd seen more relaxed posture from drill sergeants. Benjamin, I said, nodding. You new around here? Oh, not new, she said with a smile that didn't match her eyes. Just restoring order. The previous board left quite a mess. I had no idea there was a board. Apparently, Lakeside Fairview was under the rule of an HOA that had gone dormant, until Skylar resurrected it like some kind of suburban phoenix. Within 5 minutes, she was explaining bylaws, lake access rights, and community harmony initiatives. I just nodded politely, trying to process why anyone needed a permit to hang a bird feeder. Then came the line that changed everything. Technically, she said, tapping her clipboard, the lake itself is community property. So private docks, just like yours, are subject to shared access. I nearly choked on my coffee. Shared access? You mean anyone can walk onto my dock? Oh, not anyone, she said sweetly. Just approved residents with written notice. Written notice from who? I asked. From me. That was when I realized what kind of neighbor I was dealing with. The kind who doesn't want peace, she wants control. I smiled, mostly to keep from laughing. Well, Skylar, I appreciate your enthusiasm. But that dock's mine. Built it myself, paid for it myself. You want to fish, there's plenty of shoreline. Her smile stiffened, just a fraction. I'll make a note of that, she said, scribbling something down. She turned to leave, and for the first time, I noticed the back of her blazer, embroidered in tiny gold letters, Lakeside HOA, Leadership with Grace. Yeah, grace wasn't exactly the word I'd use. It started small. It always does. A week after our shared access conversation, I found a bright yellow envelope taped to my door. It read, "Notice of non-compliance." Apparently, my dock's paint color, weathered brown, violated aesthetic standards of community cohesion. I didn't even know brown could offend someone. I called the number listed, Skylar's number, obviously, and asked, what exactly is community cohesion supposed to look like? Her tone was sugar and vinegar. Well, Benjamin, Lakeside Grove has a vision. We strive for consistency. Your dock should be a soft gray, not that rustic brown. I'll take that under advisement, I said and hung up, which in HOA language means absolutely not. 2 days later came the next one, noise violation. Offense, excessive hammering past permitted hours. Funny thing, the hammering came from my neighbor's renovation project 3 doors down. I hadn't lifted a tool all day. I walked the letter straight to Skylar's mailbox and slid in a reply, a copy of the sound meter reading from my porch camera. I added a sticky note that said, "Decibels don't lie." After that, it turned into a cold war. She'd leave little reminders on my gate, lawn maintenance schedules, garbage can alignment guides, even a warning about potential algae buildup near my dock. I started keeping a folder, Operation Clipboard. Every letter, time-stamped photo, and voicemail went inside. Not because I wanted revenge, just insurance. Experience taught me one thing. Always document the small stuff before it turns big. Soon, she started hosting HOA updates in her driveway, folding chairs, lemonade, the whole neighborhood invited. And without fail, my name would come up. Some residents, she'd say, eyes sliding toward my house, seem resistant to community cooperation, but we'll bring them around. The neighbors laughed politely, not wanting to pick sides. I didn't blame them. Skylar had that tone, the kind that made defiance sound like a criminal act. I just kept my head down. Installed motion lights, added a few more cameras. One afternoon, as I was raking leaves, I caught her standing near my fence, phone raised, taking pictures. "Afternoon, Skylar," I called. "Need me to pose for those?" She jumped a little, then recovered with that plastic smile. "Just documenting property boundaries. Standard procedure." "Right," I said. "Because trees tend to move around when no one's looking." Her smile thinned. "I like to stay ahead of things." "So do I," I said, and pointed to the small camera light blinking right above her head. That was the first time she didn't have a comeback. She turned, heels clicking away, muttering something into her phone, and as she disappeared down the path, I couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't done. Not by a long shot. By week 3, Skylar had gone from annoying to strategic. The flyers, the anonymous complaints, even a Facebook post about certain residents refusing to support the community. It all had her fingerprints on it. But the thing that tipped me off? The footprints, small ones right near the dock, but not mine. The bell on the lakeside gate jingled around midnight 2 nights in a row. When I checked the camera feed, there she was, crouched near my boat with her phone flashlight. Now, I'm not a man who believes in yelling matches or Facebook wars. I believe in lessons, calm, memorable lessons. That's when the idea came. If Skylar wanted access so badly, I'd give her some. I spent that Saturday like a craftsman preparing for an art show. Pulled out my toolkit, wired a small sensor under the dock planks, and connected it to my boat's ignition. See, the boat, a black electric model I'd built myself, had a security feature called loop mode. If someone tried to start it without the remote key, the controls locked and the motor circled the lake in slow figure 8s until manually stopped. Safe, harmless, humiliating. Perfect. As I worked, the sun dipped behind the ridge, turning the lake into molten gold. Each screw, each cable, each line of code felt like meditation. I wasn't angry. I was focused. I tested it twice. It worked flawlessly. The boat glided out, circled, then returned like a loyal dog. While tightening the last bolt, I thought of her. Skylar Campbell, HOA queen, clipboard in one hand, righteousness in the other. The woman who tried to turn my peace into a public park. If she came again, she'd walk right into her own lesson. That night, I made coffee and watched the moon crawl across the lake. The water was still silent, like it was holding its breath. I wasn't sure if I wanted her to take the bait, or if I just wanted to prove she couldn't help herself, because people like Skylar, they don't stop when you say no. They stop when the mirror shows them how ridiculous they've become. By the time I turned in, everything was set. The gates were locked. The cameras were rolling. The boat was armed, and as I drifted to sleep, I heard the faintest sound. The bell at the lake gate. One soft chime, just enough to let me know the night had an audience. I smiled. Showtime, I whispered to the dark. The next morning started like every other. Black coffee, quiet waves, and a lake that looked too innocent to trust. But quiet mornings have a way of hiding noise. Around 9 a.m., my phone buzzed. A motion alert. Lakeside Gate. I opened the feed, and there she was. Skylar Campbell, pastel cardigan, visor, and that ever-present clipboard, tiptoeing down my path like a burglar pretending to be on official business. She paused at the gate, glanced around, then let herself in. Bold move, I muttered into my mug. The camera followed as she reached the dock. She bent down, inspected the padlock, then, of course, went straight for the boat. My boat. She touched it like it was rightfully hers, smoothing her hand over the side like she was blessing it. Then she climbed in, clipboard and all. Now I'll admit, for a brief moment, I wondered if I should stop her. But then she reached for the ignition panel, and that settled it. The motor hummed to life. The boat drifted away. Skylar smiled, satisfied, thinking she'd won. Then it turned, and turned again, and again. Within 30 seconds, the queen of the HOA was making slow, humiliating figure eights right in the middle of the lake. I nearly spit my coffee. From the window, I watched her try everything. Pressing buttons, flipping switches, waving her clipboard like a magic wand. Nothing worked. The boat just kept circling, quiet and calm, while she grew louder and redder by the second. Then came the neighbors. Phones out, recording, commentary in real time. Is that Skylar? Someone called. Why is she on Ben's boat? Is she stuck? 10 minutes later, the local sheriff showed up, summoned by one of her loyal followers who reported a boating emergency. When the deputy arrived, he found Skylar mid-loop, shouting about property rights, community stewardship, and illegal dock modifications. He stood beside me on shore, arms crossed. She trespass? Multiple times, I said. Got it all on camera. He sighed. That checks out. She does this every few months somewhere. After a few more rotations, the boat eased toward shore, automatic return sequence, and came to rest like a polite valet service. Skylar stumbled out, soaked, furious, and somehow still clutching her clipboard like a shield. "Benjamin Reed!" she shrieked. "This is harassment!" Funny, I said, sipping my coffee. I was about to say the same thing. The deputy stepped between us. "Ma'am, you were on private property. Without permission. That's trespassing." Skylar's jaw dropped. "This is community land." The deputy pointed at the dock sign. "Private property. Been that way since the 80s. She sputtered, tried to recover her authority, but the crowd was already laughing. Phones recording, whispers spreading like wildfire. By noon, the footage was online. By sunset, it had gone viral. HOA president gets stuck on stolen boat. Lake Karen takes L on camera. The next week, Skylar resigned for personal reasons. The HOA's board quietly dissolved 2 months later. As for me, I got exactly what I came out here for. Silence. These days, the only sound I hear is the water against the dock and the occasional heron passing overhead. Sometimes the wind rattles that same little bell, and I can't help but smile. Because peace isn't something you ask for, it's something you defend, quietly, cleverly, and just long enough for the loud ones to expose themselves. And as I sit with my coffee, watching the lake shimmer under the sun, I think, maybe I didn't just win. Maybe I reminded her, and everyone else, that peace doesn't mean weakness. It just means knowing when to let the trap close on its own.